1,000 worlds just like this, they all exist. And I can help you connect. So think value and put it in perspective. Can't rule the world, but we can live in heaven. Here on this earth, talking here on this earth, it's ours, will never be a tent. I hope you like just a few reflections. Like to be the cause for whatever the effect. But every statement creates another question. Alright everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny. This is the most hardcore news show on earth. I am your host, Konrad Rogoz, welcoming you to episode 98. Today is Saturday, October 19th, 2024. This episode is going to be titled something like NFL Football, a Stage Play, Masculinity's Final Act. So you already know I'm going to be talking about football, kind of out of left field, so to speak, with the show and everything, but it's all going to tie in. That's what we do here. And I'll read a little bit of a thing I put together, which is kind of like a background to the whole episode. It's a brief little thing. It's not that we're going to wake up in a world of chains and bondage. It's that slowly we are losing what makes us unique. And then what's the point of freedom? We won't have the sense for life. It's not that the elites or some technocratic AI system will make life hell, but it's that we ourselves will not know what it is that makes life valuable and wonderful. Okay, I guess that's a bit of an intro to the show, as I introduce and explain what football has to do with tyranny in the world, right? So, It's about masculinity, right? Of course, we're going to be talking about football. It made me think back to a presentation I did called Attack on Manhood. I haven't done like a full presentation in a while. This is what the videos I used to make before I started doing the show every week. And this was Attack on Manhood was November 22nd, 2022. That's almost 2 years ago. As I look back at it now, that presentation was very basic. And in it, I talk just about the most basic ways that masculinity is attacked, socially, etc., psychologically. And one of them is the television, okay? The TV in general. Now, I have a nice big TV in my house. It essentially functions as a computer monitor. Like, that's what it does. I do have a digital antenna that picks up national broadcast channels. And I ever only turn that on for one reason and one reason only, and that's to watch NFL football. And I do that. Yes, I admit it. I do that. So we're going to talk about that, and we are heading right into the middle of the football season now, okay? So I watch this every week. I get to observe this every week. And obviously it doesn't come up a lot in the scope of this show. So I'm dedicating a whole episode to it, and I'm going to talk about everything I've seen. I'm going to talk about all the assaults that I see on men and manhood and masculinity in general. Okay? Because to me, football is almost like a shared language for men from all different backgrounds. Like races, inclinations, everything. Like, it's incredible actually how this unites people that would otherwise have like nothing to talk about. Like, this has happened to me at work. I'm talking to some guys that barely speak English, but I could have my Packers hat on, and then you strike some sort of conversation through that, because everyone watches football. A large percentage of these men, especially like working men, right? And for that reason, we'd better assume that some of the most powerful programming against men would be there, right, in the program that all the men watch. So if you wanted to do something that destroys men, you would put it there. If you believe that such an agenda exists against men, wink wink, it does, obviously, right? That's what Attack on Manhood was about, and you could talk about this every week. People do. So there's going to be a lot of toxic masculinity in this episode, okay? This is a fun one. And I'm going to talk about all these aspects from most irritating to least irritating for me personally. So this also is a personal episode because, look, I'm trying to make the style fit the topic. So we're going to talk about a game, like a sport, like a kid's game, where people have fun and run and express themselves. So I'm going to present it as such. Like, there's a lot of me, my character, my personality in this, okay? I think that's how it should be, and I'll actually talk about that. But anyway, most irritating aspect of football that really is it is important. It's these damn commercials. The commercials are always making men to be out some bumbling, fumbling fools and idiots. And when we talk about commercials, I have to really like reintroduce the topic totally from scratch because people seem to think that commercials are just about selling you things. And so then whenever you make the observation that, hey, how come all of these ads depict men essentially as fools, idiots, incompetent, dependent people? You ask that question, you're going to get all these explanations. You get, oh, because women make up 90% of the purchasing power, they 90% of the financial transactions, and that's why the advertisements cater to them. And that explanation, all it does is it brings attention to the more alarming implication, which is why would women respond well to seeing their father, their husband, their son as some sort of a clown to be ridiculed? Someone's got to explain that to me because it doesn't make sense. Not many people ask that psychological question, but if and when they do, then they're going to be told, hey, these advertisers, they know what they're doing. They only care about selling the most products, right? The highest product, making the most money. And so they make the women seem much smarter than the men in these commercials because then that assures her that she must be the one making the purchasing decisions, right? Not even through collaborating with the man in the house, but despite him or even without his knowledge, okay? And that's a good explanation, but big surprise, Konrad does not buy this garbage fucking explanation because that's not what's happening here. And people are so quick to repeat explanations for any kind of phenomena that would throw into question a societal paradigm of any kind. Anytime you bring up a question that could throw an entire way of thinking into whack, then you get these people that are just ready to rattle off explanations. Like with chemtrails, right? You'll say, hey, why are they spraying? They're spraying all these aerosols in the sky, right? Well, actually, the air pressure difference, it results in a rapid freezing of water crystals, and this is due also to the fuel being ejected from the plane. This is what people say. People that have never had anything to do with air travel, like you don't know what it would look like if that plane ejected an aerosol spray or fuel or anything or green salsa even. These people, they know nothing except for that explanation that they're ready to give you and present to you as absolute truth. I see that all the time. They wouldn't know shit about what comes out of that plane, but they'll tell you, like they've been a pilot for 20 years. Also, you see this with vaccines now. If you bring up vaccines, hey, there are harmful ingredients in here, right? All of these inconsistencies, stuff that doesn't add up. How come it works for some people and doesn't work for others? And then other people, they never used to get sick until they got the flu vaccine, and then they got the flu, and now they're sick all the time. Well, it's because it's a weakened version of the virus, and everybody's immune system is different, right? That's when I would say different how. How is it different? And the virus is weakened? How? How is it weakened? How does it change then during the process from it leaving the lab in transport all the way up until it goes into your body? How would that even be studied? No answers for stuff like that. No answers. Because how would we know? And then you hear like, but it would have been much worse if you just caught it out in the wild, in the world out here, and didn't get vaccinated. How do you know? Again, how do these people know that? You don't even know how a pill is pressed, let alone about the mechanics of a live bacterial culture, let alone a virus, which to this day cannot even be stated fully to be certainly even a living entity. But when you talk about origins, there are only theories for the origin of viruses. And then what's worse is when you do run into a pharmacist or microbiologist, it's almost worse because those people do know exactly how the procedures are done. They know all the proper language too. But number one, there are fundamental assumptions they make that are never questioned. Like, hey, Just because you can suppress an illness with a medication, how do you know that that's actually more beneficial to the person than them experiencing that process of that illness as they address the cause of it? And I'd always like to take it to that point with these people, but it's hard to even get to that point with people like that, because when you touch their area of expertise, they really don't like talking about it. And I'm always wary of something like that, because you talk to a construction worker about construction, or a plumber, that they'll be free. They have nothing to hide about the way they do things. If you think there's a better way to build a fucking cabinet, they're ready to hear it, right? And this is why I like making the comparison to other trades. Like, see, with dentistry, like with dentists, there is no debate, right? When you have a rotted tooth, you cut it out and you get rid of that shit, and that's it. Then with orthopedic surgery, right, which I've gotten, no one ever questions that. No one ever questions an ACL operation and the effect that it will have on the body. It's self-explanatory. Like, you tore your ligament in your knee, we can tie the ligament back together and then it's going to grow. It's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, and you just do the surgery. It's just like plumbing. You unclog the fucking pipes and then the water's gonna work. Pretty simple with a lot of these age-old trades. But with virology and pharmaceuticals, there are all these explanations on explanations and theories. They just removed, this was going to be in an episode, but I was talking about this. Just this week, they removed one of the 4 strains of the flu out of the seasonal flu vaccine. Why? Because it hasn't been seen anywhere since the spring of 2020, somehow. That's actually true. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, the Yamagata strain of the flu is gone. There's no Yamagata strain of influenza. How is that possible? I don't even know how you would find it. Again, this is what I was saying. I'm reading an article about this. I don't even know what that strain looks like. I'd have to see it for myself. So again, we're in the dark here. But assuming this is true, how is that shit possible? This is the kind of mystical, spooky shit that takes place in the realm of health and medicine. Okay? And whenever things are not clear and simple in the explanations we get, I make a very healthy, reliable assumption that bullshit is around the corner. That fuckery is afoot. Okay? So say it like that. And I know that's a big digression from the topic of commercials and football games. But the point is, when things don't make sense, don't believe the cheap explanations and don't ignore the obvious. And what's obvious to me about these modern commercials is it's not about money. It's about social engineering. These companies, they make so much money. And do they really increase the sales? Like, do they increase the sales of M&Ms by having a fat guy cut a tree backwards and then the tree falls on top of him because of how dumb he is? Like, how does that make sense? And then why do we assume that the main concern of a mega corporation is to sell more products? That's a big assumption. Why do you assume that they're not concentrating their efforts in market manipulation? Because after a company gets to a certain point, they're no longer competing to be the biggest in the industry. It's not a natural competition the way it should be. Because once a company becomes a significant player, like all the ones airing commercials on national TV, so we're talking about all of them, their main concern is not even a competitor. They're concerned with 2 things. One is government, which I'll address. Subsidies, penalties, taxes, government stuff. That's one. And 2 is the market future. Meaning, what is the consumer of tomorrow going to be like? See, the company knows they're here to stay. Nobody's going to put them out of business. So then they treat their commercials like an educational program. Like actual programming, like training you to become a consumer of their product. They're in molding the minds of the people. That's the business they're in. And now, this is not something that makes sense to do if you're the only business doing it, right? If you're thinking long term and everybody else is outdoing you in the short. That only makes sense if multiple big players are working together to do such a thing. And they are. And then this is one thing that's very difficult for people to understand. How can seemingly unrelated, competitive people who are in a competitive relationship with each other, how are they working together? Well, there's an understanding among key members on all levels of the corporate structure who share a goal and an agenda to weaken the family structure. I'm cutting to the chase here with the commercials. We're talking about weakening the family structure. And that has an application on multiple levels for a corporation. One of them is a strictly financial one. Because if you, as a company, can, let's say, fill in for the role of a husband, so to speak, then obviously you're going to make a lot more money from that woman. She's going to buy a lot more of your product. And I get that sounds far-fetched, but it's well known that a close-knit family is an intelligent buyer. They don't buy things that they don't need. Their purchases are decisive and rational, not only for themselves, but on top of that, when you have children involved, you can bet those are going to be responsible purchases when you got mouths to feed, you know? And these big corporations, they do not want intelligent buyers because intelligent buyers demand high quality and effort from their seller. And of course, this has been pointed out as a flaw of capitalism and a flaw of selfishness. It goes that if a business owner only cares about himself, then he's going to do the least amount of work and the shadiest business practices to put in the least effort to make the most money, to make his money. Well, I totally reject that this is how free market works, because that has nothing to do with free market. So I personally now, I don't cut corners at work for me. I don't care if somebody's watching me. I don't care if I get in trouble. It's literally just me. I'm concerned with me. And that's because if I'm lazy or a slacker, I'm going to feel like a bitch. And when I feel like a bitch, I don't feel like a real man, then life gets really difficult for me. This is just me now. This is just me and my internal moral code, okay? That's one example. Now, the man I work for, he also does good work. We do good work as a business. We don't do substandard work because not only is there a name and a reputation wrapped up in the long-term performance of the construction that we do. That's one reason. But the other reason is there's a human aspect involved in this. Like, this guy wants to make a lot of money, sure, but not by slithering and scraping and lying, okay? There is something called the business owner's conscience, okay? People don't act like this. People act in a way with conscience, especially people who have created something in life. They tend to be very, right, who are the biggest philanthropists. You'll see that they are wealthy business owners, especially if they built their own business, because they know what it feels like to be at the bottom. Kind of beside the point, though. It brings me to a point that's rarely discussed, which is, and this is kind of an aside, but it's good that it's there. There are asides to this. I don't want to just talk about football. There's this so free market capitalism and the corporate structure, those are two completely different things. We think of corporations as, capitalism, big business. It isn't. We associate business with big corporations. So then when I talk about, hey, all the regulations should go away, all the taxes should go away, all concepts of duty and obligations of a business should go away, literally the businesses should do whatever they want. So people think it sounds like I'm in favor of the modern corporate structure and hierarchy, and I am not. I actually think that corporations are a transitional stepping stone from free market to a centrally controlled command economy. Because a single owner, creator, sole proprietorship, that's what creates wealth and maintains it. When you have an individual chief decision maker, not this corporate structure. Why would a collaborative decision-making process even be better? I question this. Right, getting input and brainstorming from people is one thing, but to get a board of directors all split up They all split up the decision-making power evenly amongst people who did not and could not build that business from the ground up again. They have no idea about it. That's supposed to be more efficient. Why? It can maintain a good thing for a while, but inevitably, because of the lack of leadership by someone who holds the cohesive concept of the business within them, since he's the one that created it, when you take that person out of the business, that eventually is going to lead to micromanaging. It's going to lead to decisions being made by people who have no idea what the business is about. They're just playing the business game. They're not in the mind. They're not in the craft. You're just going to lead to computers and protocols making decisions, as opposed to decisions being made based on general principles to inform those decisions. See, a businessman or an entrepreneur, he should be like an artist, where an artist's creation takes the form of himself. It's his reflection. A man's spirit and character is supposed to shine through what he does. In what he does, his character is supposed to come out. And in that kind of a system, capitalism works, okay? It has worked. It's created the best material lifestyle there has ever been, to our knowledge, in human history. I say material, okay? You could say psychological as well, but in a whole different way. Anyway, you can't take the artist away from his creation. Think about this show, This Week in Tyranny. You couldn't put it into an AI program or get 5 people to do it, even people who listen, to then collaborate and then next week continue the show without me. It couldn't be done. Not because I'm too smart or I'm slick with, words or anything like that. I'm not. It's not that. But god damn it, these videos every week are a raw and honest reflection of the man, Konrad Rogoz, of me. That's the whole point of it. That's why I make this show on my couch with my little blanket as the border, right? My little 2 lights over here. I'm playing with focus and I'm still getting blurry, out of focus videos. This microphone connected to the audio interface could disconnect at any time. And then I have to record this all over again. I got all these technical problems going on. Whatever. The point is, this is me. And it makes sense. This is worth doing. Because nobody can do that the way you can. That's the whole point of the show. And by the way, that's why I haven't attracted a lot of attention. And I haven't become a big channel. Because in life, I don't attract a lot of attention. I'm not a flashy guy. I don't appeal to a bunch of people. I appeal to a few people. And then those people that I do attract, they feel like they found a treasure. Right? This is just how it goes with me, right? And honestly, I think that's what This Week in Tyranny is. It's like a needle in a haystack. And this is just what it's going to be for now. If it grows, it grows. But that's happening as I'm working on myself. I do want to be somebody that appeals to more people and is more, I guess, has more of a general outreach, right? This is something I'm working on. But again, this is not just the show, the content of the show. This is also as I work on myself as a person, okay? To be more like this. It makes the point. So this show, it's honestly not even for the present day. It's not even for today. Although the whole theme of it is this week, present day. But this is really more of like a message into the future. It's like a message in the bottle. It's like a time capsule to be opened in a time where the world is so fucked up that people will know they're missing something, but they won't even know what they're looking for. And they'll be looking for what it looks like to be a man who loves life, is not scared to die, and doesn't fall for bullshit. That's basically what I'm about, I think. That stands out. I'm about a lot more than that, but that stands out. So the reason that modern money system and capitalism sucks is it's not just greed, it's not selfishness, definitely not. It's actually that the human being has been removed from the equation of production. And it's the same reason pornography is bad for you. That's an aside, but it's an important aside. Pornography is bad for you, but it's not that a lot of sex is bad. It isn't. Actually, we need way more of it. If we're gonna make this world a better place, we need way more sex, quick. But the reason porn is harmful is because it takes you out of the equation, right? You're watching other people perform an act in which you are supposed to be the star of the show. And that's, in sex especially, it's crucial that it's something personal between two people. That's important. Because again, this is an act that contains within it the power of creation, right? To actually create another human being. So it's all about creation, and you're actually expressing yourself through the act, right? That's your show, actually. And your partner is like your mirror. You become each other's reflections. Okay? So you're never supposed to take yourself out of that. Without you, it doesn't happen. Okay? You got to be there. And this is where the crisis is in all different aspects of life. It's that everything has become so impersonal. Okay? This is actually why the corporate hierarchy is going to collapse upon itself. It's just not sustainable or efficient, because it's not running on the engine that is the human spirit. Okay? And when we talk about corporations, really the only reason you would have a corporation, the only advantage of a corporation is that you're not going to go to jail if you get sued because your business did something, right? If it was only you, then you'd go to jail if your company's chemical spill resulted in people getting cancer. You would be responsible. But a corporation can avoid that. They would just dissolve the corporation. So it's the removal of full liability. All it is a layer of separation. And that works in our corrupt world, because in our corrupt world, we no longer practice self-defense. So we no longer can challenge someone to a duel. Instead, we have to get scammed by the government to pay money for their arbitration in the sham that is the court system. Okay? So again, it's theft again. And again, it's not selfishness that destroyed capitalism. It's the corporation that destroyed it, which is a collective. So a corporation, by nature, is unselfish. Right? It took the human being out of the equation. And specifically, what destroyed capitalism and free market is it got took over, or it always was controlled by, or it got took over by the biggest corporation on earth, the government. That's all that shit is, guys. It's this entity that's all up in your life, and then when somebody gets sent to take your freedom or your life or your money, and you call them out, they all say it wasn't me. It's always just following orders. It wasn't me, just doing my job. This world is full of fucking it wasn't me's everywhere. No one takes full responsibility. That's how it is in business. That's how it is in politics. The officials change every few years so that no one is held accountable. The workers blame the managers blame the executives blame the shareholders, right? All these layers of separation to distract you from the reality that is you are being violated right now. Very simple. And if you do not understand how government tyranny flows through the corporate structure, you should look up the letters ESG. ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance. This is something that the United Nations came up with. The United Nations, by the way, is the world corporation. People think that it has no power, it affects nothing. Well, in a city like Chicago here, or in Denver, or in Philadelphia, or anywhere in California, or Poland, or Spain, it affects everything. Everything is affected by the United Nations. Now, ESG is an investment principle, self-described investing principle. What it really is an ideological demand. It's demanding a business to advance the United Nations agenda. Not demanding it outright, of course, but incentivizing it, so to speak. It's You don't have to state your ESG efforts and participation, right? Meaning what? That you're doing something to help the environment, which is really to be against oil, be against carbon emissions. Social stands for social justice, which means, you know, any kind of minority group, you got to give them special treatment over the majority. Governance, it has to do with like your internal controls as a corporation, right? Like being more harsh on cybersecurity or about controlling money and looking into transactions. A lot of this stuff is developing. I really should do a video about ESG and then call out the things that are going to happen in the future, because once you've read the United Nations papers, you've read a couple things, you've researched this stuff for a couple years, you can see like 5-10 years into the future what's going to become a more prominent talking point, what's going to become a more important issue as things go. So it's not even like we're making predictions, it's just this is an agenda. So anyway, you don't have to say outright that you're for or against ESG. You won't get penalized if you don't. But if you don't, then the market is going to be tilted and weaponized against you. Okay, more money is going to go to your competitors. You're going to get less of it. And if you don't play the game, you're going to get left on the outside. You're going to get left out in the cold. And again, this idea of never stating it clearly, this is what corporations act like. You'll never hear them make a bold statement. They never have any unpopular opinions. They never say anything really definitively. It's just like slogans, corporate talking points. It's, like, what is ESG? I explained it in the way that, because I know what it is, but what is ESG? Environmental, social, and governance. It's nothing specifically. It's nothing that you can define. The exact meaning can always be adjusted to support the collectivist agenda as necessary in the future. Like what's environmental today might be against the environment tomorrow. This is just like 1984. Okay, the way they play with language and use ambiguous language that could you could never catch somebody red-handed. You could just switch history, right? Erase the past, because there is no definitive language by which you can keep a clear record of events. Anyway, that's why the commercials always make men out to be these fumbling idiots. So on one hand, you're watching Patrick Mahomes, who is a craftsman and a magician with the football, absolutely. Then you're seeing Lamar Jackson, who's a force of nature, he's untouchable. See Fred Warner, tenacious, vicious defender, who sees the entire play develop in front of him. So you see what men could be. You see what a man is supposed to look like. And these are, again, like your porn stars. So you see how gifted they are. You see how the women respond to them. And it should inspire you to pursue that in your own life. But of course it fucking doesn't. Big surprise. It actually does the opposite. Okay? It reinforces the dichotomy here, the split. And that's the mind control that is crucial for tyranny. It's this kind of split that some people are gods, and then the rest of the people are fucking slaves, and that's you. And you are constantly bombarded with that message that they belong in the field, and you belong on the fucking couch. That's what these commercials reinforce in your subconscious. But hold on, a lot of the freedom movement is anti-sports, right? Anti-football. Most of the freedom movement agrees it's a pointless distraction. Football is mind control, all this stuff. That's not even me. I see art and poetry and stories of war and love and triumph and redemption. I love watching football. It doesn't make me any more or any less of a man. The point is, I understand the nuance of what I'm looking at, right? That's the important thing, is to understand nuance. Whatever you think about the game, or whatever you think about anything, any topic we're talking about, I'm just drawing attention to things where nuance is important. So here there's the split. When the game is on, you're watching competent, successful men. You are. But that's not where the programming happens for the most part. It's not when your adrenaline is high, because that's not when learning happens. The programming happens when you mentally check out. The game pauses, you let your guard down, you sit back, and then you become a sponge for all that garbage that they're feeding you through that screen. They catch you when you're vulnerable, and that's when they hit you with all the fucking stupid commercials. And many of them now with the actual sports stars, like you'll see Patrick Mahomes and all of them in the progressive commercials. And then they have Andy Reid, the coach, and they'll be doing this. You'll have a guy who won the Super Bowl talking about bundle Rooski, is doing this. Like, this is a Super Bowl winning coach. They're over there undefeated right now. You're about to see them play, and then in the commercial you're seeing them act like this person who's like a deity on the field, and then he just looks like a little college airhead clown. Accomplished, men who are respected by everybody in a 100-year-old exclusive fraternity that is professional football players. So a bunch of clownery and foolery, except for when it's about voting or the military. Because a big part of what the NFL is also is it's a military recruitment center. And you'll see that before the big games especially. Then they bring out all the flags, they bring out the veterans, they fly the jets, they have the videos from the people at different bases throughout the world, and they're celebrating their team. It's a recruitment center, this league. And when they're doing that, or they're having one of those voting commercials, which you're seeing now, you'll see them, especially now with the elections coming up. Then you see these guys not acting like a clown. They're going to actually sit their ass down in a chair and talk to you like a fucking grown human being. And when you see that, when you see somebody sit down in a chair and start talking to you like serious, you can believe that it's going to be a commercial about voting, or it's going to be about the military in some way. Something involved with the government. Check it out for yourself. And other than that, it seems like the only kind of commercials that present men in any sort of respectable light is car commercials. Because a car is a symbol of a man's social identity. It's what you take outside and show off. It's like your ego. It's very external. So it makes sense that would remain aligned with that archetypal traditional man. Because no matter how much you program somebody in their primal, there's, this stuff doesn't go away that quickly. But this stuff with the cars, even that irritates me. With these commercials, it's like when it's time to show off, then we want to project a strong image. But when it comes to anything that happens within the four walls inside your house or within the confines of your brain, then it's like total chaos and idiocy. And that's all I have to say about commercials during NFL games. Very irritating. But before I go into the next topic, I want to talk about the timing of the sports season worldwide. It's the worst possible timing for a man's personal development. And this isn't just football now. I'm talking about all the major leagues, including soccer in Europe, around the world. This is when all the sports leagues have their season. It's fall and winter. And this is the way I see it with the cycle of the year. Summer rules the year. Summer brings out the best in us. We have energy. We're going to have fun. Like the natural and primal within human beings, it's going to come out in the summertime. And no matter how enslaved we ever get, summer is always going to be a time of freedom. And actually, it's in the interest of a control system to keep it that way. Because without that release valve, they would run the risk of rebellion, like for real rebellion, an actual freedom movement fueled by that, summery, warm, persistent spirit. So summer is the time of optimism, but then because it's so great, it passes by quickly. So we run out of time. We run out of time to do things we want to do, and then the fall sets in, and the winter approaches. Now this is the time where man reflects and says to himself, I could have done all this. I'm going to use this time now to work hard so that next summer is better. That's how it goes. Whether that's working out, saving money, growing your own projects. This is supposed to be a time to hunker down and put the fucking nose to the grindstone. That's what fall and winter is supposed to be about. But instead, you get what? Football season. And football season is short because it is just that damn exciting. If it was any longer, these players would kill each other because it's such a high intensity activity, right? So then when it happens, how could you not watch? You got Saturday, college football, all day. Sunday, NFL football, of course, all day. You got Monday night football, you got Thursday night football. So before you know it, you're spending most of your free time in the fall in front of that TV. Now you combine that with the holidays, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas. By the time you get into January, the playoffs are starting. And then when the playoffs start, then it's really worth watching. That's when the best games are. That's when they mean the most. That's when you get the best and the worst out of people come out. Then you really got to watch it. And then the frequency of the games, the amount of games decreases. But until you get to the Super Bowl, which is like mid-February now, you're still going to be in that pattern of waiting for something on the weekends, looking forward to a reward as opposed to working toward a reward in the future. So you're still in that pattern. Now, February, when we have the Super Bowl, that's midwinter. So by midwinter, you no longer have the energy to implement any of the changes that you procrastinated from last summer. So New Year's resolutions, the joke that they are, this is when they're fading away at this time due to fatigue from the winter, right? You can't just start something it's very hard to start something that way from rock bottom. We should have already been taking summer's energy into the winter, okay? To be hardened by it and come out hitting the ground running, so to speak. But instead, then we got the spring. We're just counting days away for the springtime, right? With now this void that you need to fill somehow because you spent the whole winter chilling and eating, right? So, and by the time you ever get that ball rolling, if you do, it's summer again, and the cycle begins again. But that's just me. Again, this is just how I see things. Now, next most irritating thing. This is the situation with Tua Tagovailoa, who is the Miami Dolphins quarterback. He right now is out with a concussion. He didn't just get one concussion, he got 3 concussions in the span of a year. He's had a couple of these injuries in the past. One, he ran into a player's knee. One, he hit his head. He does seem to hit his head in a very unfortunate way. I won't go into the mechanics of how he plays, but some of it is the way he plays. Some of it is going to be just an unfortunate, combination of events. The point is, with his concussion now, there have been calls for him to be prevented from playing. Things like demanding the league to ban his return to football. Because if it was, if this was a normal situation, he would have been back, or he would be out, 1 to 3, 4 weeks, and then just be coming back from a concussion the way other players do. But with this being so prominent, and concussions have become a more, hot topic in the last few years, almost every analyst or commentator says the same thing now about Tua. And these YouTube comments under the videos, they're saying the same thing. Everybody's saying it's time for him to retire. And my answer is, says who? And why are people so quick to give out all this advice to people and assume that you think what you think is right, what in your life would be right for them? You're assuming that the same thing that works for you is going to work for them. And I find that really arrogant and irritating, because it's not your life, it's his. And people always say this, like, oh, all the money's not worth it. Like these people who are like, everybody's a fucking wise sage. Like they have this fatherly advice to give people. I hear this stuff done to me. Sometimes I marvel at who tries to give me advice and what position they're coming from. But that's beside the point. People say that all this money, it's not worth your life, your health, the time with your family. So my response is, you're the one, that person saying that, you're the one that assumes that his primary value in playing professional football is money. You're saying that, not him. It seems like no one even realizes that this is a huge presumption on your part. Saying he's made millions of dollars and he's only 26. He's got his whole life ahead of him. No, that's what you think life is. You think life is about sprinting to accumulate as much money as possible when you're young, and then spending the rest of your life spending that money. Like what? In a timeshare in Florida? Is that what life's about? People fail to understand what it's like to have a dream and then achieving it in your life against all odds and living it. If that's what he loves to do, it doesn't matter how much money he has, and it doesn't matter how old he is. If he's prevented from being with his love, despite his capacity to do so, he's going to live like a bird in a cage. And people are calling for that. Now, the most egregious and disgusting thing of all is the rumblings and the growing calls for an authorization of some sort to be given to some doctors to be able to prevent someone from playing, like at their discretion. And this is what I'm worried about. Setting the precedent that if you could point to a history of head trauma, then you can treat a person like a mental patient and make them do something against their will. Right? Because we do that with mentally ill people. Society agrees that in their case, even if they haven't done anything, their free will is not treated the same way as the rest of society. And this is the way we already do things. And this could be done to me, this thing with Tua. Because if there was video of 4 of my highest impact collisions, I would very modestly, conservatively say that they're in the range of Tua's. Okay? And 2 of those happened 2 weeks apart. Actually, right around this time. October 13th and October 26th, 2020. So this is like right around this time. And 3 of those would be in a span of like a year and a half, like 19 months. Which is one of the main points of conversation, of evidence, that that Tua shouldn't play football anymore because he had multiple concussions in a short period of time. So they're saying he's concussion prone. Okay. So bottom line is, could you imagine someone trying to tell me now that I'm not capable of making my own decision about the risks to my body as a grown adult human? I swear people have gone fucking nuts. And again, this is the problem with corporations and endorsements and brands. Tua can't come out in front of the media and say this the way a boxer or a UFC fighter can, and tell all those talking heads. He should tell them, stay in your lane, know your place, and don't you ever try to talk to me like you know what's good for me. These are people that never knew him, never helped him, never lifted a finger to help him, doesn't know what he went through to become who he is. And now he's famous, and now you think somebody who's a public figure is your property, and you can tell them what to do? I hate this type of presumptuous bullshit. Slightly irritating. Next topic. So, in football, we've got a lot of replay reviews and replay assistants. This year, they've They don't just do the coaches' challenges, which took long enough, not just booth reviews where they will review and look at the play to see if the officiating call was correct. They now have an assistant, like a video assistant referee, which quickly makes these decisions really without delaying the game so much. But still, when it comes to, in many of these situations, this process will go on for longer. So this is something that's been great in eliminating blatantly wrong officiating decisions. However, it eats away at the spirit of the game, which is my point here. And this video assisted refereeing, it's actually not native to the NFL. This was first introduced into association football, meaning soccer. I first knew it in the Premier League. So in the European soccer leagues, they have something called VAR, which is just, it's a referee just watching the broadcast, watching the videos. He'll draw the line, see if a player's offside, see if the ball's over the line, basically using technology to make decisions. But sometimes when it's unclear, you got everybody just waiting for the decision to be made. And that's a problem now. That's a problem. Because, and I feel like I have to make the disclaimer before I even get into it. I'm not saying that all of this is puppet master controlling the strings to destroy men and masculinity and take the fun out of the game. I'm saying we got to notice where we are losing some of the fun in the game and why. And that I'll talk about. The problem with all these replays, all the time waiting for replays, waiting to see if there was a penalty, it's created an environment where there's no finality to any moment anymore. So every celebration of a triumphant moment now is delayed. It's always put on hold. And it all depends on the approval of a central authority. So you score a touchdown, you're supposed to get up there and celebrate. And you get up, you're ready to go, and you have to wait. You have to, was there a penalty? Like everything okay? No replays? No challenge? Oh, okay, now I can celebrate. So you never get that moment. You don't get that reward. Now this is of course a double-edged sword, because part of being an authentic man or woman is being right. You have to be consistent with reality, so it's important to get the call right. I'm not saying that we should reject the use of technology to determine if a ball crossed the line or not. So, another disclaimer, it's not about lamenting or despairing over change, even if the change you're facing is a great loss. So I'm not saying we got to get rid of the replays. What I'm saying is it's about being aware. It's enough to know that your shameless decisiveness as a man is under attack. You're losing it. It's your reckless egoism. That's a great advantage. See, men are funny creatures. When we feel good, when a man feels good, they act like they're the only men in the world and nobody can bring them down. And that's not a foolish thing. That's not a clownish thing. That's a wonderful thing. The simplicity of that kind of confidence is essential. It's absolutely essential for the act of creation. To create a structure, to create a word, to create a family. It all starts with an idea. And that idea has to be a guiltless, shameless inspiration. Okay? You just go for it because you do. Now, of course, we see this in men. I'm not saying this is exclusively a male quality. I'm saying it's a masculine quality, because it is. And with a lot of this now, like I said, did somebody sit down in an elitist meeting and come up with the plan to introduce all these replays and make the sport less enjoyable? Probably not. Probably not. They definitely would if they could think of it. But I almost think these Satanist, collectivist, United Nations, Club of Rome types, I don't even think they understand football enough to even socially engineer it. They got to stick to the commercials, because that's what they understand. These pencil necks, they're not the type that ran around at recess. They stayed inside at recess, So all this stuff that we're seeing, I don't think they're doing all of it. So a lot of this is our fault. See, we get influenced and pushed into this direction, but we are to blame for this consensus. The consensus of like the way football is now. It's like everybody wants to make the conservative play every time. Everybody wants the best mathematical return for every play call. Always get the call right. That's what everybody says. All we want to do is get the call right. So you want to always get the call right, even if the review takes an hour. Not me. I'd almost want to give the points away to get on with the game. Because after an hour, what's the point in playing the game anymore? It's just like having a girl in your bed and you're thinking so much about what to do, like what the right thing to do is, and then you forget to actually just be there with her. So what's the point? You know? And speaking of women, I'm saving the least irritating thing for last. Last topic. Alright, I'm just going to say it. All these women reporters in sports. You know, there, I said it. And if that sounds off-putting to you, I guarantee you're a man. Because it's women that I hear this from. Like, they point it out to me. And it's true. They force women in front of these microphones to talk about sports. And it's just forced. I'm not going to belabor the point. It just is. And it's not that women can't do that job well. They can. Like, I'm a hockey guy. And I think Emily Kaplan is exceptional. She interviews the players and coaches, the hockey players and coaches, in a way that compliments them, and it amplifies them. It brings out the best in them. Okay? While also knowing the game that she's talking about. I said a similar thing about Barbara Walters in the presidential debate of 1980, a few episodes back. Look, it's all to say there's a right way to do it, there's a wrong way to do it. And in the NFL, the NCAA, these sideline reporters, they're just not good. And it's just like the replay reviews. It makes a unique sport just less special. It just does, okay? And then you have the Sunday Night Football host, Maria Taylor. She's very good, very competent, right? She's just so much taller and more physically imposing than like the former NFL players and coaches next to her that they have with her. And it's, you know, she's a former basketball player, so, you know, I'm cool with that. I like that. She doesn't make me feel small. But let's not ignore that visual that the entire country is seeing on Sunday Night Football. It just tears down that mystique of masculinity that NFL football has or has had. And there is a value to mystique. There's value to a mythical, heroic character to aspire to, right? There's value to seeing a man that is special, and he's the type that no one towers over. So no one towers over him. Not a flag, not a doctor, no person, not an organization, nobody. This is the kind of man who breaks away from the crowd. He elevates above the masses. And this is the man who's under attack today. And of course, if he's under attack, then that's an attack on women too. Because when men don't feel like men, then they're unable to make a woman feel the way a woman should. And that's kind of the whole point. I really think that says it all. Before I dig myself into more trouble, talking about masculinity and femininity, I'm gonna leave it there. Okay, that's a very toxically masculine, but also a very lovey-dovey show for you. That's kind of what I do. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.